Hello and welcome to Raid Madness. This is our champion selection show. Welcome, I am Colred, and with me, as always, is my editor, whose name is Sun. Sun, how are you doing today?
It is another beautiful day. I'm excited. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm excited too. We've got a lot to get through in this show. We've got a lot of things to reveal, but it's been a long time coming. We've been working on this for several weeks, and I am excited to be here today and finally reveal our full field of 64 champions. So first things first, we need to tell you how we decided upon this particular field of 64 epic champions. Now, Sun and I reviewed over 190 epic champions in the game. We were able to eliminate some, and we'll show you how we did that right out of the gate. So in game, there is a rating system where players can rate each and every champion in 18 different categories. So we used your ratings, the ratings of the players, to determine this field. We chose 10 of the 18 categories that were the most important, and every champion had to have at least one 4.7 rating in one of those 10 categories. The 10 categories were Arena Offense, Demon Lord Clan Boss, Hydra Clan Boss, the 4 classic dragons, Dragon, Ice Golem, Fire Knight, and Spider, and then the 3 new dungeons, Iron Twins, Sand Devil's Necropolis, and Phantom Shogun's Grove. We compiled those 10 scores together, and that gave us our base score for each champion. But in looking at that field, we realized something that you may realize as well when you look at those public ratings, which is that they are not all equally reliable. So we had to tweak that number a little bit. We applied an algorithm that would eliminate the 3 weakest scores of every champion and multiply the values of their strongest performing areas. And then we did an eyeball test, and we realized there were some very important champions still missing from the list, and so we added those in. We dropped the 10 weakest champions from the field and then added 10 champions who should be on the list, but for whatever reason, the rating system didn't value highly enough. And there were some significant oversights on the part of the review system, weren't there, Son?
Absolutely. So what we're looking at with the rating system and the algorithm is, in some cases, some champions, they're specialists. They're designed for one thing. They've got a great purpose in the game. But with the ratings, they just don't really hit anywhere else. So taking that into account, we added those champions in. And yeah, there were some big names that otherwise would have been left out of the field. And I really think that would have been a mistake. So we're going to get to those champions in a little bit, but I think this is the right call.
I do too. And I think that one of the things that's going to happen is the viewers may be surprised at some of the seeding ranks. They're going to be champions who are ranked much more towards the middle or back of the pack than you would expect. You would expect them to be more highly ranked. There's some champions who are very highly ranked that might also be surprises. And I want the viewers to remember that these are the public votes. This was not our ranking system. We did not choose the ranks for these champions. So their seeds are really based on the public views. And then we just tweaked them enough to make sure that the field wasn't totally ridiculous and that certain champions would not have been left off entirely. And there would have been some really big names left off entirely. In fact, I think Seer came in at something like rank 150, and Mordecai was actually the weakest ranked champion in the entire system. So by making our adjustments, we were able to bring those 2 traditionally well-regarded champions and others back into the field, and hopefully they exist somewhere close to where they should be. But if they don't, that's part of the excitement too, right? There's no perfect bracket, and part of the fun of these brackets is finding those mismatches, those champions who are not in the correct place, and maybe making your predictions accordingly. Okay, so that is how we selected our field of 64 champions. Now let me show you how the bracket is set up. This is a traditional March Madness style bracket, so we have 4 regions. We have named the regions not just by location, but also by dungeon in the game. So our northwest region is the Ice Golem region. The southwest region is the Spider's Den. The northeast region is the Dragon's Lair. And the southeast region is the Fire Knight's Castle. So each quadrant of the bracket is named as a region, both by location and then after one of the dungeons in the game. In each region, there will be 16 champions seeded 1 through 16. So in the entire tournament, there are in fact 4 1 seeds, 4 2 seeds, 4 7 seeds, 4 16 seeds, so on and so forth, just like in the March Madness tournament here in the United States. If you're not familiar with that tournament, this is how we do it here. Who knows if it makes sense? Everybody does their tournaments differently, but this is how we're going to do this one this month. I think we have a lot of international viewers who may be a little bit confused, son, but what are you going to do?
Exactly. There's no perfect system, but this is our system, and we're going to make it work.
We're going to make it work. That's exactly right. So we hope that it is at least clear enough that once you can look at the bracket for a while, you'll figure out exactly what we're doing. And remember, you will be able to make your own predictions, fill out a bracket of your own, and decide a tournament champion. And then we will be giving away a prize for the most accurate prediction, and that will be from our brand new merch store. Okay, so now it is time to finally reveal our seeding. And here they are at last, our number 1 seeds, 4 very powerful champions, well regarded by the community. Starting with Demytha, we have Runekeeper Dazdirk, Godseeker Aniri, and Doom Priest. What do you think of this quartet, son?
So I think, like you said, well-regarded champions. Now, there might be some surprises. I'm not sure if everybody's going to have Runekeeper Dazdirk or Doom Priest in the number 1 seed, but they're really highly rated and they're great champions. So I think it's going to be a great fight in this number 1 seed.
I agree with you. I think those are 4 fantastic champions. It's hard to say who is a number 1 seed and who's not, but remember, the people have spoken, and so these are the champions they've chosen. We'll have to see how that plays out over the length of the tournament. All right, now heading to the number 2 spot.
All right, in the number 2 seed, we've got Rectodrath, we've got Ursula, Farrakhan, and Geomancer rounding up our 2nd seed. How are you feeling about them?
Well, I think some people will be surprised that Geo is a number 2 seed and not a number 1 seed, but surprisingly enough, Geomancer in the rating system isn't actually ranked that high. We had him originally around 31. So we had to move him up considerably to get him into the 2nd spot. But everybody else on this list, that is their natural position in the rating system. And I would say pretty good champions, excellent champions, obviously very powerful champions. We'll have to see if the viewers agree.
Absolutely. Geo is always number 1 seed in our hearts, but he's number 2 seed in our bracket.
I don't know about that, son. Not everybody loves Geo as much as you do, but I'm sure some people out there will probably agree. All right, let's move on to the number 3 seeds. We start with Stag Knight, and then we have Maneater, Deacon Armstrong, and Venomage. And I have to say, as much as you love Geo, I love these 3 seeds, some of my favorite champions in the game. Stag Knight and Deacon, I think, could potentially even be considered stronger than 3 seeds. Maneater is obviously one of the most popular champions in the game in terms of building unkillable clan boss teams. And then Venomage is an all-around carry, great poisoner, can be a solo champion. This is a really powerful group of 3 seeds who might be looking to upset the apple cart and move their way up the bracket.
I absolutely agree. I think we've got some powerhouse champions here, and it's a great 3rd seed round.
I agree. I think it's going to be fun to see what these champions do. How about we check out the 4 seeds now? Okay, here we are with the 4 seeds. Son, who have we got?
All right, in the 4 seed lineup, we have got Madame Ceres, we've got Duke the Pierced, we've got Allure, and we've got Ostrox, a new champion, rounding out the 4 seed.
Yeah, Ostrox is a relatively new champion, only came out maybe 3 or 4 months ago. I personally have not built one yet, so I don't know if he deserves this 4 seed or not, but he is definitely well regarded in the community, and his kit is impressive. So we'll have to see what the viewers think. Does this 4 seed make sense, or is he overrated here in our bracket? I think the other champions are hard to argue against. These are mainstays in terms of powerhouse epics. Allure may be one of the best turn meter controllers in the game. Duke the Pierced, who is very similar to Stag Knight, who was a 3 seed. These 2 guys are hard to tell apart. And then you have Madame Ceres, a fantastic buff, strip, and debuff champion for Arena, but also good in wave content. So 4 very good champions here in the number 4 seed. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's move on to the 5 seeds. And here we are with our 5 seeds, and we can see the tanks and sustaining champions are starting to make their way into the bracket. Our first 5 seed here is Taragi the Frog, a great ally protector. We have Vogoth, Wuzgar, and White Dryad Naya. So, son, we have 3 tanks here at number 5. These are really our first dedicated tanks. Do you think that this shows that maybe tanks aren't quite as valued as the more traditional utility champions that we had higher in the bracket?
Yeah, Cole, I think you hit it right on the nose. We really love our utility champions, but sometimes our tanks go underrated. They are the backbone of our team and really add a lot of extra value.
And interestingly enough, we still haven't gotten to a lot of damage dealers. I think players really enjoy damage dealers, and yet we don't have that many so far here. We're already down to the 5 seed. Let's see if we start to get the damage dealers into the group in the next few seeds. All right, so let's move on to the 6th seed and see what happens next.
And that's right, here in the 6th seed, we have got a Kempton, Miscreated Monster, Skull Crown, and Mausoleum Mage. Now, we are starting to get a little bit of DPS.
Yeah, I think obviously there are still support champions here who are rated very highly, as Mausoleum Mage and Miscreated Monster both show. Miscreated Monster is that hybrid tank support champion who really kind of continues from the 5th seeds, that tank meta. But we are seeing some damage dealers here. A Kempton is a great AoE poisoner, and we also have a Skullcrown here who is a great arena damage dealer, but can actually be used in a lot of wave content. In fact, she's one of the few epics who is an excellent Nightmare campaign farmer. Now, what's interesting about the rating system is, of course, we didn't include the values for faction crypts or campaign, but also remember that the rating system doesn't even include Doom Tower bosses. So there are no ratings for Doom Tower. And I think that will be a factor moving forward. We're going to start to see champions who are particularly strong in places like faction crypts and campaign and Doom Tower. And remember that their seedings don't reflect that. So when you get to vote on these champions matches, you're going to have to consider all of the champions ratings that you personally care about, and not just the ones that are here in the rating system in game. All right, so let's move along to the 7 seeds. We were talking about damage dealers, and here is an entire bracket full of damage dealers. We have Genbo, who is an amazing arena nuker, Dark Kale, who is a fantastic boss poisoner. We've got Skrank, who is an AoE HP burner, one of the very few epic AoE HP burners. And we've got Whisper, who hits super hard, another boss killer, more of a direct damage style and ignore defense. So 4 damage dealers here at the number 7 seed. Son, do you think that we'll continue to see more damage dealers, or is this the batch? Is this the best batch we've got, and we're likely to now just see more of a variety of champions for the rest of the seedings?
Cole, as we start to go further down the seed list, I think we're going to continue to see some variety. But what I'm seeing here in the 7th seed is when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and we've got a bunch of hammers. This is the 7th seed, DPS seed, and I'm loving it.
You do love your DPS champions and characters in every game we play, son, so I'm not surprised that you love this 7 seed. I will say that one of my favorite champions is in this foursome, and that is Genbo. I think he is one of the best arena nukers in the entire game. I run him on several accounts, and I hope that he goes far in this bracket, but we'll have to see what the viewers think. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's move to the 8 seeds.
Rounding out the 8th seed, we've got Thane, we've got Lady Annabelle, Thanasil, and Morag. Now, we've got some specialists here. We've got Thane, a great clan boss champion. Like you said, those Doom Tower ratings aren't included, but Lady Annabelle is making it into the 8th seed. Give us some thoughts here. What are you thinking?
Well, like you mentioned, I think Lady Annabelle is most well known for being one of the few champions that can solo Bommel. She's a relatively cheap solution as just a regular epic, not even a void epic, and I think she's highly regarded for that one job, but she can actually do a lot of work. And if you go to the public ratings for Lady Annabelle, you will find that she has very solid ratings across the board. And of course, anybody who can survive Bommel can probably survive most boss fights. So I do think she belongs here in the 8 seed, maybe even a little bit higher. We'll have to see how she does in the tournament. I know that you like Thane very much. She was one of the first champions that you pulled, and she's done a ton of work for you in all the boss fights. She's not just a clan boss damage dealer. She really works against any boss. But so we have 2 kind of boss specialists here. And then we have 2 other champions. I think Thanasil may be a little bit of a reach here at the 8 seed. he's actually rated even higher, and we had to knock him down a little bit to get him down to the 8 seed. But we'll see if we are undervaluing him, and if, in fact, the voters think that he should be even higher than this 8 seed. And then Morak, you know how I feel about ally attackers. I love ally attackers. She also brings a strength in. She's a cool looking champion. I don't know where she belongs on this list, but she does belong on it somewhere. And we'll have to see what the voters think about her. Let's move along. We are into the second half of the seedings now. We are down to the 9 seeds. Let's check them out. All right, so here we are at number 9 with Ugo. We have Royal Guard, Tayrel, and Ruella. This is really interesting because I think a lot of people are going to feel like these 9 seeds are underrated or maybe overrated in one case, but these are extremely popular champions who do certain jobs really well, and they're in the middle of the pack here. What do you think about this group, son?
Absolutely. They're in the middle of the pack, but I think we're starting to see that variety really reappear again. We've got Ugo as a great support champion, but doing a lot of work in Hydra. We've got Royal Guard. We've got Ruella, more of a potential Fire Knight specialist, really highly rated there. So yeah, I think this is another great seed. Tayrel, 9th seed? I don't know. Some people might put him a little higher. Some might even put him a little lower.
I agree. I think Tayrel could be a little bit of a controversial pick here. Remember that ratings don't get erased in this system. So Tayrel is actually one of the most rated champions in the entire game with over 11,000 entries. And he's been in the game since the very beginning. He used to be incredibly powerful, but over time he's been a little bit power crept. So if we could do recent rankings, I think he would be a little bit lower than a 9 seed. But if we did rankings from 2 years ago, he might be like a 4 seed. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it shakes out with this OG champion. All right, moving along, let's get to the 10 seeds.
All right, in the 10th seed, we've got Ayla, we've got Skaramis, Magnar, and rounding it out, Seer. Now, like we said earlier with the user ratings in-game, Seer did not even make it into our seeding system, so she definitely was worthy of a spot. 10th seed feels potentially a little low, but I think it's going to make for some great matchups for Seer. Cole, what are you thinking?
I agree completely. I think both Magnar and Seer could potentially be dark horses to come and make some upsets at the 10 seed. They are probably more powerful than that and more popular, and this is a voting contest. I actually expect Seer to potentially go pretty far, depending on who she's matched up in the first and second rounds, because one of the things about being a 10 seed is you're going to have a harder matchup. So the question is, if you break through that first round, then it gets easier, because now you are replacing a higher seed. So we'll have to see if that happens for either Magnar or Seer. As far as the other 2 champions are concerned, I don't actually have them on either of my accounts. I don't have them built out, so I can't really say whether or not they're overrated or underrated. It feels pretty good based on the ratings that we observed. So we'll have to see. Do we have 2 accurately ranked 10 seeds and maybe 2 underrated 10 seeds? Only time will tell. All right, moving along. We are now down to the 11th seed. Let's see who we've got there. Now, this is really interesting because just like we had Seer, not even in the bracket, the first 11 seed is Claude. Now, Claude Beastfeeder was actually, according to the system that we used, the 3rd highest ranking champion in the entire rarity. Of all epics, the 3rd best rated champion, and that was extremely overrated in our views. But maybe we're wrong. We knocked him down to an 11 seed. We'll have to see if the people think we knocked him down too far. Next to that, we have Aboro, then Neldor, who is a very new epic champion and an excellent Fire Knight specialist, and then one of the old school great arena epics, Gorgorab. All right, son, so what do you think about these 11 seeds? Do we have anybody who's underrated here who may be looking to create an upset?
That's a great question. I think we've got some interesting choices here. Neldor is a very new champion, so we're going to have to see how he shakes out. Gorgorab, on the other hand, is an old school arena king. So depending on how people value that arena abilities, I think we're going to have some potential shakeups there for that ranking.
I think you're right on both counts. New champions are hard to predict because we don't really know what viewers are going to think about them. And there are a lot of players who may not even have these champions, but the ones who do may be rating them very highly. And then Gorgorab being an old school champion, he might be just a sentimental favorite from a lot of people. Not that he doesn't have value, but for older players of the game, they remember back when he was the epic support king in Arena. They may value him very highly. All right, let's move to the 12 seeds and see the next 4 champions in our bracket.
All right, in our 12th seed, we've got Sanguinia, Miss Rider Dathi, Annex, and Sinesha. Now, it's looking like a pretty stacked field for the 12th round. Tell me what you're thinking.
I agree. There are some maybe sleeper picks here in the 12th seed. I have just really started to build my very first Sanguinia. I never knew how good this champion was, but the ratings actually say she is stronger than a 12 seed, but she is one of the champions who had to give way when we fit new champions like Maneater into the bracket who were left out. So I think the viewers may view her as higher than a 12 seed, and perhaps she should be. Mr. Rider Dathy's got a great extra turn mechanic. If you like DPS champions, son, this is a guy to watch out for, as is Annex. Both are excellent damage dealers. And then we've got an old school support who is an actual duo with Skullcrown. And so if you value that duo, she could be used in Arena and Blender comps, but she's also a great support champion all on her own. So 12 seeds are going to be interesting. They might be looking to upset the apple cart.
All right, cool. Well, let's not put the cart in front of the horse. Let's see what the 13th seed is.
All right, son. Well, here at the 13th seed, I actually think we're comparing apples to oranges, and maybe some of these apples have worms in them. It's a little bit of a strange grouping here. I do think Hitatsu, who's our first champion, is an excellent tank from the Shadowkin faction and maybe a bit underrated. Gala, on the other hand, is a complete single target nuke. She often plays in high level Arena. We have Vala from the Barbarian faction, who I don't even know how she made it into the field. I don't think she's a top 100 epic, but she was actually something like the 13th rated champion overall, and we've been able to shove her down the list into the 13th seed, but we couldn't knock her out entirely. And finally, we had a champion who wasn't even in the field and absolutely deserved to be, and that is Seeker, one of the best turn meter fillers in the entire game, who was ranked outside of the top 100, and we've pulled up here to match him up with Vala. What do you think? Do these champions all belong in the same group or not?
Well, Cole, I think you said it succinctly. I think we pulled Seeker from the Abyss and put him into the daylight. He needed to be on the field. He is a great champion. Is he a 13th seed? I think there's going to be a little bit of controversy here.
Yeah, I agree. I think players really like this champion. I think they're going to see him as way too powerful to be a 13 seed. But remember, these ratings came from players' reviews. So the public seemed to think that he wasn't even worth being in the top 64. But we'll have to see if the YouTube viewers overrule the general player population, and we'll see how far Seeker goes in the tournament. Let's take a look at our number 14 seeds. So after the 13 seed, son, this may be a little bit of a surprise here because we have maybe some more traditionally powerful, well-regarded champions here. What do you think about the 14 seeds?
Absolutely. In our 14th seed, we've got Sylar, we've got Archmage, we've got Crusher, and we've got Taguar. I think we're getting a lot more support in this 14th seed, but all around some great champions. Give me your thoughts.
I agree. Of the 4 champions here, I think Tagore is maybe the newest champion, and people may not know him as well, but he is definitely a powerful support that I think could be underrated here at the 14th seed. We've got Skullcrusher, who is one of only, I believe, 3 or 4 AoE counterattack champions in the entire game. And so that rarity of a skill probably deserves to be more valued than a 14 seed. Archmage Helmet is the first Doom Tower champion you can get. He's an absolutely great champion. And then we've got Sylar, who, as you know, is excellent in AoE content. So wave content, faction crypts. She may be down here at 14 because faction crypts weren't part of the scoring system, nor is Doom Tower. Both of those areas are really good wave content areas for champions like Sylar. So after looking at our 13 seeds and our 14 seeds, with the exception maybe of Seeker, it feels like these two rankings could be swapped pretty easily, but we'll have to see how it shakes out as the tournament proceeds. All right, let's keep it moving. We've only got 2 more groupings to go, so let's check out the 15th seeds. In this quartet, we have Hoskarul, Vergis, who's another old school champion, Frenzy, who's a relatively new champion, and then Sepulchre Sentinel. Now, we know with new champions like Frenzy, it's really hard to say how people are going to feel about her. She could be overrated from the initial hype. She could be underrated because people haven't yet discovered her true powers. We're going to have to see how the viewers feel about her. I think in Vergis's case, we have something kind of like we had with Gorgorab and Tayrel, an old school champion that's well regarded by players who've been playing the game a long time, but we don't know if there's been enough power creep to maybe knock them down the rankings. A 15 seed might be surprising for a champion like that. Hoskarul's a great AoE stun champion, and then Sepulchre Sentinel features heavily in clan boss teams. What are your thoughts about this group?
We've got 2 old school champions, we've got 2 new school champions, and we're going to have to wait to see if it's the old school champions that are going to take the new champions back to class or the other way around.
Yeah, I like that, setting that up, old school versus new school. I do think that is a theme that we may be seeing playing out, not just in this seeding, but in the entire bracket. All right, we've got one more spot to show, so let's get to the 16 seeds.
That's right, Cole. In our 16th seed, we've got Mordecai, we've got Fennex, we've got Umbral Enchantress, and rounding out the last spot, we've got Anchorite. Looks like a pretty good field here. What are you thinking?
This is a really interesting quartet here because I think we have some champions that certain players are going to value very highly, much more highly than would be representative of a 16th seed. But again, we had some champions who were just at the edge of qualifying, and then we have one champion who wasn't anywhere near qualifying, and that is Mordecai. Mordecai was actually the lowest rated champion that we rated. He was the 191st champion on the list, but if you look at his 2 highest ratings, they are very high. He is well regarded as a Spider champion and as a Hydra champion, and he's one of those few AoE HP burners available at the epic rarity. He is also a free champion that you can potentially get with a new player promo code. So I actually expect if he can get past the first round, who knows, he's going to be taken on a 1 seed, but Mordecai might be set up to make a pretty deep run here as an upset dark horse pick. Okay, that rounds out our field of 64 champions. I think it's an interesting field. I think it's going to be an exciting field. But son, there were also some surprises there. What champions and seedings do you think are going to surprise people the most?
Exactly. It looks like a great field, but there are some surprises. We got Doom Priest in the 1st seed, Claude and Vala really highly rated by the voters. Seer and Seeker initially not even making the field. But we did also have some snubs. Cole, what are some champions maybe viewers are surprised were left out?
That's a great question, son, because for every surprise champion that makes it onto the list, that means that spot is taken away from somebody who maybe deserved to be there. And as a result, there are some names that we may have expected to see that didn't make the field of 64. So we have well-regarded champions like Grush, an excellent support who is actually a free login reward champion who did not make the field. In addition, we have Husk, a max HP AoE nuker who is fantastic for Hydra, and he wasn't even close. And finally, perhaps the biggest snub of all in my view is Inquisitor Shamil, who is an absolute Hydra god, and he's good in some other places. I think people see him as a specialist, and unfortunately, if we were simply picking all the best specialists in the entire game, that would make for a new bracket. So we had to draw the line somewhere and keep with the players' votes in the system, in the rating system in game. And that means that those 3 excellent champions didn't make the field. All right, but now it is finally time to reveal the brackets. Now we took all of these champions and randomly placed one of each seed into the 4 different regions. So like we said at the top of the video, every region will have 1 seed, 1 2 seed, 1 3 seed, all the way down to 16. They will be matched up according to the classic bracket system in March Madness, where the 1 seed will match off against the 16 seed in the first round, the 2nd seed will match off against the 15 seed, and so on and so forth. As a result, if the seeding is done correctly, it would pave the way for the 4 1 seeds to meet up in the semifinals, and then the finals to be decided by whichever 2 1 seeds remain. But of course, no bracket ever works perfectly, so I don't expect that to happen. But let's look at the various regions and see where each champion is placed. Okay, so here we are in our first region, the Northwest region, the Ice Golem's Peak. You can see our first round matchups. There are a few matchups to note here, but maybe the one that I'm keeping my eye on the most is Deacon Armstrong in the 3 seed, with Farrakhan the Fat being the 2 seed, maybe one of the weaker 2 seeds in the field. Deacon could be set up for a run to the Epic 8. Here we are in the Southwest, the Spider's Den. One thing to watch out for here in the Southwest region is how the damage dealers do, because we have several, and they are of all different types. We have the AoE HP burner in Mordecai. We have the absolute boss killing god in Thane. We have the AoE poisoner and debuff spreader in Akemptom. And then we have Genbo, who is that arena nuker. So we'll have to see how the DPS in this region shake out. All right, moving back up to the top of the bracket, we are in the Northeast. This is the Dragon's Lair region. And as you can see from the first round matchups, this actually looks like the quadrant of the bracket that might be the most predictable and have the fewest upsets. There's still a couple of opportunities for somebody to shake things up, but I expect this one to play out fairly close to plan. And finally, we get to the Southeast bracket, the Fire Knight Castle. Now, this is going to be a really interesting quadrant because I think Doom Priest will probably be regarded as the weakest 1 seed, while Geomancer may be regarded as the strongest 2 seed. But in addition, there are some other champions to keep an eye out in this region. Seer at a 10 seed is very low. We've got Venomage who's here. Seeker at a 13 seed, another low seed for a great champion. We've even got Ruella there, who I think is a little bit low at 9. So a bunch of champions who are maybe undervalued in this bracket, and that could really shake things up. Okay, so that is it. That's our bracket. I gotta say, it was a lot of work to put it together, but I am super excited to see how people feel about it. If they think the seedings are good, if they're bad, if they don't care, and they're just ready to make their predictions. But it is about time to go, and I can't wait to see how people react.
Yep, you're right, Cole. I think it's a great field, and I think people are going to be really excited to get their votes in and get those predictions in early. It's really anybody's game. It's going to be an interesting match, and we're all excited for it.
And that brings us to the last piece of business, which is how can the viewers get involved in Raid Madness? Now, you are going to have the ability to fill out your very own prediction bracket for the entire tournament, but that's not going to go live just yet because we are going to be bringing you more videos. We have 4 content creators lined up for this week. Each one is going to give you their expert analysis on the matchups in one of the 4 regions. Once those content creators have filled out their own brackets, we're going to open the brackets to the public and allow you to start filling out your brackets. You'll be able to change them at any time up until the voting goes live for the first round, which should happen midnight Friday. So watch out for those videos, subscribe to the channel and make sure you get those notifications. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel to make sure you get your notifications for those videos and you don't miss any of the coverage of Raid Madness 2024. We hope you're excited for it. We certainly are. Son, do you have any last thoughts for the people before we go?
You know, we're excited. We've been working hard to put this all together. Raid Madness is here, and I'm hoping everybody's going to have a great and fantastic time with it.
All right, it's time to get going. Thanks so much for hanging out. I have been Cole Red. He has been my editor, Son, and we will see you in another video soon.